Okay, so I have the balance sheet, a very basic balance sheet of the commercial bank over here, showing assets and liabilities. So the purpose of the balance sheet is to basically balance your assets of a firm with its liabilities. So let's say that an individual deposits $100 in a bank. Now, on the bank's balance sheet, this will represent it as a liability because the bank owes this money to the individual, to the customer. Now, the bank has $100 which it can lend. If it lends it to a customer, this loan given to the customer will be recorded as an asset for the commercial bank. But the problem is that by law, the bank is required to hold a portion of the deposit as a cash reserve. And this cash reserve is an asset for the bank. Now, how much is supposed to be how much is supposed to be held as a cash reserve is determined by the reserve ratio. So the reserve ratio basically determines how much of the deposit will be held as a cash reserve and how much will the bank lend it to its customers. So let's say the reserve ratio is 1:9, which means that one portion needs to be held as a cash reserve. Now, 1:9, so one portion of 100. So let's say if we divide 100 into 10 portions, and one portion of it will be cash reserve. So cash reserve will be of 10, and let's say the bank lends the remaining 90. So the loan of 90, and we can simply balance this very basic balance sheet. So if you want to note down the definition of reserve ratio, it's the proportion of a client's money that needs to be kept in the bank still by law, right? So the bank cannot lend the entire deposit to the customers. It needs to hold some of it in the form of cash reserves, and the remaining it can lend it to customers. Now, the reserve ratio is used to calculate the money multiplier, or which is also called the credit multiplier. So we know that the multiplier formula is 1 upon withdrawals, or let's call them leakages this time. And reserve ratio is a leakage because that part it will stay in the bank still. It will not go out and will not create any further investment or consumption, right? In the previous example, the ratio was 1:9, which means 10% of the deposit will stay in the bank still. So 1 upon 10%, that's 0.1, and this will be 10. 10 is the money multiplier. Now, the bank can lend 90 out of 100, which means that if I calculate the credit creation, right, so the bank gave away 90 in the form of loans, right? This 90 will be multiplied by the money multiplier. This goes back to the money multiplier. So the new spending created is of 900. This is new spending created. So this is what the reserve ratio is, and this is how the money multiplier is calculated.